Hello! Today I'm going to show you how to create new scripts with the construction sets and assign them to objects or quests. First we open it up and load the Oblivion ESM master. This isn't always needed. For example, if you want to do a very small script that doesn't need anything that exists in the base game, like create a new chest that is opened on a key press or just hide the interface or something like that, you don't need the master file. But for anything that requires any existing objects, NPCs, variables, cells, you should always load the master file. To create a new script, we open the script window and select New. There are three types of scripts: object scripts, quest scripts, and magic effect scripts. We will start with an object script. An object script is assigned to pretty much everything on this list that is not a spell. A creature can have an object script. Armor can have an object script. Potions, misc items, soul gems, activators, pretty much everything on this site can have an object. To create a new script, you enter the word script name and your name for the script. And save it, and now it will appear in this list. You can also just write SCN instead of script name, because every saved letter is a bit of save time. It will work just as well. Some people prefix everything with AAA, so it will appear on top of the list. Others do a unique prefix for their mod. For example, if this would be my ring mod, I could do this. I like this because I like having all my IDs together, and if I load the mod with different mods in the construction set and other people also used AAA, it gets a bit confusing, and there's pretty much a zero chance that anyone else has used my prefix with my names. Downside is, in those lists, it will be in the middle and not as easy to find. If you're on Windows, which I assume you are, it's actually pretty easy to jump to any script here. You can just, when this window is open, type on your keyboard like MRM and it will jump right there. I'm on Linux right now and it won't work, unfortunately. So for this one, I will go with AAA. Now first, I want to show you two great resources for writing scripts. One thing will be the documentation that came with your OBSE download. It has a list of all the functions that are added by OBSE and a short description how to use them. Unfortunately, this does not contain any vanilla functions, and it also does not contain extensive examples how to use codes. Like, they will have a short note about the syntax, but not much more. The other source is the Construction Set Wiki. This is a great source and very extensive. Unfortunately, it's pretty outdated. It was last updated around 2010, 2011, and some things have changed since then. Some notes that are there are still for old OBSE versions that haven't been used in over a decade. So if you find something that says, this will crash the game, you should probably verify, because there is a chance that it might no longer crash the game but has been fixed. Anyway, even if it's outdated, it's the best source we have, and you can find many great examples here, many tutorials. So whenever you want to use a certain command, I would recommend looking it up here and see if there are any notes that it doesn't behave like you would expect, or any noted workarounds for anything that could happen. To start a script, you first need a begin block. We go to this site and see a list of all the begin blocks we have. A begin block will tell the game when to run the script. A very common one is game mode. Game mode means this script will run every frame that the game is not in any menu. So you're walking around, you're fighting, you're running, you're sitting, this script type will run. A menu mode is the opposite. It will run while you are inside a menu, be it inventory, quest log, map, or even just a message box. If you click on menu mode, you see that there are many more numbers. So if you want a script to only run while you're in inventory, you could actually do begin menu mode 1002. And this particular script would only run while you're in your inventory. There are more types of begin blocks. They are more specific. For example, onAdd will run once when the object the script is on is added to the container's inventory. This can be optional, only a certain container, for example, every time it's added to the player's inventory, or if you leave that optional variable out, it will be every time it's added to any container. For example, we will create a ring that, when the player equips it, will give the player a magic ability, and on unequip, it will remove this ability again. So the block we need is onEquip. As you can see here, you can specify optionally which actor to run it on. So we will need this line here. And just pass this in here. Now one thing, this begin is a block. A begin block always must end with end, or the compiler will complain. If you have a begin and the end, you can just save. And while we are on saving, we save this file. Even if crashes are, for me personally, not that common, it's always better to save regularly so you won't lose any work you're doing. Now, one thing I do, because this editor is really the worst thing in existence, I'm going to copy my text out and paste it into my own one. And once I'm done typing here, I will paste it back. So what do you want? So what do we want to happen on Equip Play? It wants to add an ability. Let's see what we have. Perhaps a nice resist frost effect. Why not? Abilities are also spells, so we need the function to add a spell. It's called add spell too. No big surprise. Works like this, that you specify which actor, the function, and then which spell to add. So that's exactly what we want to do. But if you look down here, there's notes that there's also an add spell NS function. What does this mean? NS stands for no spam. Every time you add a spell or an item to the player, there will be a little note in the top left telling you that this was added. Sometimes you don't want that because the player equipped that ring and you just want it to happen in the background. Then you can use those NS functions and they will suppress this message. So that is what we'll be using. We type player add spell NS. We copy this ID here. Great. Whenever you work with any references to anything here, you always want to copy what is written in the ID field. Like here, if you want to work with this one, ID field. If you want to work with the reference, a reference here, perhaps send this in. Say hello to this person here. You want to use the reference editor ID. You never in scripts want to work with the by default hidden form ID. You always want to use those text IDs you see. Say goodbye to this person again. Now, in our script so far, when the player equips this ring, the spell will get added, but we also want, if the player unequips the ring, to remove the spell again. So we can copy this one here and create the unequipped player block. And instead of add spell, we want to remove the spell. We copy this whole part, paste it in here, save, and our first script is done. Now to create our ring. Rings are clothing. So we just pick the first ring we find, perhaps this one, and give it here a new ID. If you change the ID and press OK, the CS will ask you if you want to create a new form. Always select yes unless you really want to edit a vanilla object, because then you will have a new one that, as you can see here by the ID, belongs to your mod and not the base game. So you can do whatever you want with it without having any conflicts with anyone else. We want to remove the enchantment, and we want to add our script. Well, it's not really frostbite, but I'm not that weird. Now we have a ring that, when equipped, will add the ability to the player, and when unequipped, will remove the ability from the player. But how does the player get this ring? Of course, one option would be to place it somewhere in the game world for the player to pick it up, but since we're talking about scripts here, I'm going to explain to you the second type of scripts, which is quest scripts. We create a new script, and we create a new quest. A quest script is the only type of script in this game that is able to run always. It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter if you have the object in your inventory or if you're near the object, a quest script is able to always run. To have a quest script, you first need a new quest. Give it a name. Don't need to change anything else. You don't need a name here or anything, because it will not show up in your quest log. It's only there to hold the script and keep it running. Make sure that Start Game Enabled is not unchecked, because when the quest isn't running, your script also won't be running. Now for the name of the script. I usually like to do, if this is my quest, add script, so it's very visible which quest this script belongs to. Then we select quest, save, open this window again, and we can pick it here. Now, while I'm on a quest script, I'll use this to explain something about variables. Variables are used to store values inside a script. There are different types of variables. First, there are integer ones. Integer ones are whole numbers like 1, 12, 500. If you try to assign a number with decimals to them, like 1.5, it will just get cut off. It will not be rounded. If it's 1.9 or 1.1, it will always get cut off to 1. There are actually different types of integers. There are short and long ones, but the engine actually doesn't really treat them differently. So whatever. You can also use int, which is an alias for short, which is working for pretty much every use case you would have for an integer. There is float variables, which are numbers with decimals like 1.5, 3.1. Those are able to store those decimals just fine. There's also ref variables, which hold a reference to an object. Now in our script, it would not really be needed to use this one, because you can just work with those IDs just fine. But sometimes you might want to use a function to get a certain ID. For example, ask which is the parent of some object, and then want to store that in a reference, and then want to use that reference. So in our script, even if it's not really necessary, I'll be using the ref variable. There are some other variable types that are exclusive to OBSE, which I won't be using here now. We need a begin block again. Quest scripts have fewer begin block options because, well, you can't really activate a quest or hit a quest or equip a quest. So usually it's limited to game mode or menu mode. In our case, we just want to use game mode. Now in our script, we want to add that ring to the player, but only once. By default, a quest script will run every 5 seconds. So if we just do a add item command here, it will add the ring every 5 seconds again. We don't want that. So to prevent that, we do an if block that makes sure we only do that once. All these variables we put up here will, before we assign any value to them, be 0. So the first time the script is run, this variable will be 0, which is exactly what we want to ask. So we go in here, we do player, add item. I won't use the no spam version now, so we can see when the ring actually gets added. And the number. Now about this ref variable, we could also do we assign the reference to this variable and then use this variable in the command. That's how it works. As I said, it wouldn't really be needed here, but it's a nice example. And then to make sure that this is the one and only time this runs, we do set this variable to 1. So the next time the script comes around, it will no longer be 0 and this part won't run anymore. Of course, since this script doesn't do anything else, the proper way to do this would be to just stop the quest once it has done once. Like this. Then it would not run again at all. One thing to keep in mind, stop quest will not abort the quest script running. It will continue if there's any more code under here. This one will still run, and only once the script is at the end, it will stop after that. If you don't want that, you could abort the script here. With this command, return, as soon as return is used in a script, it will stop the script execution right then and there, and this message would never print. Just gotta remove those things here again. And explain about this variable. This is a special variable that only exists in quests. Every quest has this hard-coded variable fQuestDelayTime. As I said, by default, quest scripts run once every 5 seconds. If you need that more or less often, you can do. Like if you have something that is fine running once per minute, perhaps checking the weather or something, you can set it to 60 seconds. Or if you have something that is really time sensitive, you can set it to a low number so it will run much more often. Now the problem here is if too many scripts are running all the time, this can have an impact on your performance. So I'd recommend to run scripts as often as needed, but as rarely as possible. You also don't need it here. This should be enough for our example. So we copy this, paste it in here, and save. One thing before I now open the game to test. There's a third type of script that is magic effect. This one is only used in spell magic effect. So, for example, here, if you create a script effect, you give it here a script. Like, for example, the pet imp on script effect start will play some visuals and on finish will remove them. Magic effect scripts are pretty similar to object scripts in a way, but they use different blocks. On the begin page in the wiki, you can see down here the 3 blocks script effects use. Where script effects start is run once the first time the script effect is run. Finish is run once after the last time it's run. And update will run every frame while the effect is on the actor. So here in our example, as I said, once the effect starts, the shader will be played, and once it finishes, probably because the imp died, the shader will be stopped. Not really sure what kind of magic effect I would show now, so I'll just close those now and instead test the game and see if our mod so far works. Don't forget to enable the mod if you want to test something. And launch the game. As you can see in the top corner, the ring I just created was added to the player. Yeah, same. And you can find it in your inventory. If you remember the name, Ring of Frostbite. If I equip it now and change my active effects, I have 20% from the ability Resist Frost, which came from this ring. If I unequip it, this one is gone and I only have the enchantment that I had before. Here it is. And that's about it. So now you know how to create object, quest, and I guess magic effect scripts. There is one more type of script, which is function scripts, which are added by OBSE, but those are pretty advanced and I won't be handling them in this video, but in a separate one in the future, hopefully, if I don't forget. Quest and object scripts alone are enough to do very many things in this game already, though. Like, script every object you come across and use quest scripts for anything that needs to run permanently, or, you know, to actually do quests. Another location where scripts can appear are in quest stages, like here, result script, or in topics. There one. Like here, result script. Those are usually pretty short, like you finish a quest stage, you picked something up and something gets enabled, something gets disabled, the player gets some gold. You talk to an NPC and that advances some quests, so those are also some spots where script snippets really can be added. You don't need any begin or end blocks here. It's just a small collection of commands like set stage, add item that can be used here. And as soon as you enter text here, don't forget to press compile, or otherwise it will have no effect. That's about it for today. Enjoy modding.